Welcome back. This is Inside Politics here on KTN News. Many thanks for staying with us. This is Kenya's premier Sunday morning political program. Now, ODM party leader Raila Odinga has ordered an immediate stop to dredging works at the Likoni channel to allow divers to locate and retrieve the body of Mariam Kigenda and her 4-year-old daughter Amanda Muthee from the Indian Ocean. It was not immediately clear where Raila was drawing the mandate to issue such directives, yet he is not a member of the executive. Opposition leader saluted the multi-agency teams involved in the recovery operations for their determination to accomplish the mission despite many challenges involved.
From Sunday evening when the Likoni tragedy happened, the nation's eyes and attention has been focused at the Likoni channel. Family and friends have kept vigil, nursing high hopes that this search to retrieve their loved ones will be a success. ODM party leader Raila Odinga, who also doubles as the African Union High Representative for the Infrastructure Development in Africa, condoled with the family.
We are told that some dredging work is going on here somewhere, which is interfering with the exercise of trying to retrieve the bodies here. I want to give an order here that the dredging work should stop immediately so that those who are working here can work without interference of the kind of debris that are being emitted under the water, which interferes with the visibility.
Some serious challenges. Number one, the depth of the waters is about 60 meters. Number two, down there, the terrain is very rugged, and so visibility is not clear. Number three, as you know, there is strong current flowing.
The government has promised the recovery efforts will continue. Elected women leaders under the banner of Inua Mama expressed their frustrations over delays in retrieving the bodies.
Mr. President, sisi tunalia kama kina mama taifa letu la Kenya. Utakuja kuangalia watu wa Mombasa vipi? Wakati kuna mama ambaye yuko ndani ya maji.
Juu anaitwa kipicho ama kifisho ama nini? Kazi yake ni kutuwekea vitu kwa social media. Vile Kenya Navy pale imefanya rehearsal ati vile watakuwa wanapiga salute.
Kenya and Japan plans to construct a bridge to connect the island and mainland. The bridge will start near Jelabaridi Prison in Majengo, go over the Mombasa Railway Station, through Moi Avenue and Archbishop Macarius Road, before it arcs over the Likoni Channel at Mwenza Creek and join the southern bypass through Mutongwe Road.
We are going to do what we call a cable-stayed bridge, where vehicles and human traffic will be crossing from this side to the south coast. Secondly, we are doing what we call a cable car with the private sector. We have a company from Austria. We have provided them with land through Kenya National Highways, to do a cable-stayed car here, which will be ferrying about 320,000 Kenyans, every day.
Patrick Amimo, KTN News.
We have been covering this tragic incident since day one, and then those recovery operations. We are still on the Likoni channel, and the government spokesperson, Colonel Cyrus Oguna, has just spoken, reiterating what Raila Odinga said yesterday about the call about drenching the Indian Ocean. Listen.
Kuhusu matamshi hayo ya Prime Minister mstaafu unaendelea. Wakati ambapo uamuzi utatolewa tutawajulisha, lakini kwa sasa hivi mchakato wa kuzungumza na kuhakikisha kwamba nini inafaa kufanywa inaendelea.
Spokesperson Colonel Cyrus Oguna speaking a few moments ago. It is an issue that has continued to elicit anger from Kenyans about the government's response to disaster, saying that it is the government's soft underbelly, that there have been talk that Likoni is a disaster waiting to happen. Bonaki, let me begin with you. What is your take on how this whole thing, the tragedy, the accident, and until now, the breakage and the bodies are yet to be recovered? Do you think there is some sort of incompetence?
I will not call it just incompetence, but I'll call it acute incompetence. What we have are people in power and a leadership that is removed from the realities on the ground. When you see how human beings head towards the Likoni ferry, you will assume it is in my village in Aboma, mbuzi zinaingia, because there is no order at all. it is the fittest, it is just what we will call the Obesian world. It is nasty and brutal. If you do not have the energy, you will remain behind. And when I saw whatever has been happening in Likoni, I asked myself a simple question. How do the people who work with the crutches or the disabled get into that ferry? Because that is just a question. Because when you look at the stampede, it doesn't allow for a man who is being wheeled inside there to have a chance. But coming back to the issue that happened, and I express my sympathies to the family of the lady and the young daughter, I think we failed the family. We failed them as a people, and as a government also failed it. As a people, because we have a generation whereby as somebody is sinking, somebody is busy videoing the person sinking. We heard recently in the social media, there was a lady who was dying, and the lady was even asking people, why are you recording me instead of helping me? We lost the lady. Now to this one, around 7 minutes of videoing the lady. But the point is this, and I'm glad the Kenya ferry, something, that person resigned. Because how do you operate a ferry that has no motorboat around it, that has no people who can just do the basic emergencies when a disaster strikes? The other point that also it is funny how we do things. I think also we have ghost workers in the name of people in the Kenya Navy. How do we pay people in Kenya Navy who cannot dive and help the situation? We understand all the issues about pressure, and as you go deeper, the pressure increases. We do understand the physics behind that. But every time we are told we have the best Navy, and during the Madaraka Day and those celebrations, we are given recitals of all the best we have and everything. But when a disaster strikes home, we don't see the best of these people. What we see is the usual charade of our leaders going there, offering condolences, and speaking tough about nothing. But going forward as a people, we need to make sure that people take responsibility, so that when such a disaster, which is out of negligence, occurs, we see the minister going home. That is the point, the minimum we need to take as Kenyans. But the other thing, going forward also, Tanzania has a 680-meter long channel. Ours is 500. Have you seen the cost of what it will cost us to construct the bridge? The Tanzanian one, they has costed them, I think, how many billion? I think around, it was $580-something million.
Well, to be fair, the Kenyan, the Likoni channel is the gateway into the port of Mombasa, so that's a bit different, isn't it?
No. When you are constructing a bridge, Ben, you do not introduce, that is what now the entrepreneurs want to drill into us. It is the narrative they want to use to overvalue the whole thing. It is just a bridge. Construct a bridge. They say if you go to Uganda, the Ginger Way, Uganda has constructed a meticulous bridge. Our economy is 5 times bigger than Uganda. Let us just learn to do the right thing to save this country.
Mark, what is your take on this? He raises a very important question. In the next 15 days, Kenyans will be celebrating Mashujaa in Mombasa. They will be showcasing, the army will be, the Navy will be showcasing its men in white uniform. But we have the Navy, we have the Coast Guard, but we are still yet to see any meaningful effort in this.
Ben, let's first consider one thing. If you look at the records of ships that have sunk and how hard it is to locate them with state-of-the-art technology beneath the sea, I am very hesitant to call anyone incompetent, because such a feat is difficult for most people. I'll give you an example. The caves in, was it the Philippines, where those kids were stuck, the footballing kids? It took the international community how many days to navigate through caves? There was no issue of pressure, there was no issue of depth, there was no currents, there was no nothing, but it took a lot of time, and someone lost their life inside caves. So when it comes to water and the physics of it, I am very, very slow to call anyone incompetent in as far as retrieving the body is concerned, which to me is a lesser argument, because the greater argument is this. We have ferries, and if you looked at those pictures, that ferry has nothing stopping cars from sinking again. Okay? And my very basic kienyeji juakali thinking, I am thinking if they had a chain, a nyororo, and they connected it from one end of the Nini to the other, No, seriously, it would have stopped that thing.
Basic.
Yes, basic solutions. I am sure they did not need a tender committee, a procurement committee to procure a nyororo. Two, even an inflatable tube for a car to save people should they fall overboard. I have not seen a single life dinghy, lifeboat, anything around that.
They have for passengers.
No, but that's the whole point.
Right.
Number
Without divers, who will
yes.
use it now?
Then you have to ask the question that how do you run a ferry service without a disaster management team, without a rapid deployment plan? That something can happen for a period of 7 to 20 minutes and no one around you is aware. We also have to address the issue that this lady was not informed that, number one, it is best if you leave your car when you're on a ferry. And if you're going to stay in your car, you have to leave the windows open and remove your belt. Because if you're able to get out of the sinking car, your likelihood of surviving is more. And that's why I keep saying, if you don't take precaution, then the destination is not an accident. What we are calling an accident was destined to happen. Like, for example, the guy who built a school with chicken wire. It was not accidentally that the building fell. That was the destination of that building. It was definitely going to fall. And that's what we need to address. We need to address that as a country, we do not take necessary precautions to prevent such things from happening. Right. And that's the bigger and larger conversation.
It is a discussion. It is a bigger discussion. Jorotich, I lived in Likoni for a couple of years, my family, and it was much better then. There were better ways of, managing the crowd. What happens right now is total chaos. What is your take on how the ferry service is run in Likoni?
Well, first of all, I'll say the demographic bulge has not translated into any kind of operational plan to accommodate that. So when I, for example, many years ago in the 70s or the 80s, if we were crossing the Likoni ferry to go to the south coast, it's a very different proposition than today. So if you have the same exact ferries, the same exact infrastructure, but you have double, triple, quadruple the number of people trying to use it, these things will happen. And I want to really thank Mark for bringing up my pet peeve, this business of calling things accidents. If I'm drunk driving home and I run into something and I kill somebody or kill myself, you say, there was an accident. That's not an accident, that's a crash. And the crash was caused by my failure to be driving sober, or if I was sober and I was being careless or over speeding, that is human error. So we spend so much time in Kenya using euphemisms. It's a disaster, it's an accident, it's this and that, when simply these disasters in Kenya are a public policy failure. The ferry has protocols. There's supposed to be a standby diver. When was the last time you saw a standby diver on the ferry? In those days when you lived there, maybe there was. There's also supposed to be a boat, a dinghy, a speedboat ready to deploy. I've seen very few people actually wear their life vests when they're on the ferry. So we have a disaster waiting to happen. And I work in the humanitarian field and I do a lot of emergency response. You have sudden onset disasters. If it's a hurricane or a cyclone, you can say, hey, this is a disaster. We need to get into it. We need to respond. We need to deploy. Right. But a ferry crossing every day and we are calling it a disaster. First of all, may the souls of Mariam and Amanda rest in peace. They will never be found. That dredging only brings up car side view mirrors and so on and so forth. That silt, that mud, the recovery with the retrieval will just never happen. The question is, what are we doing to prevent these things? When we talk about famine in the north, when we talk about all these things in Kenya, famine in the north is not a disaster. It's a public policy failure. And the minute we as Kenyans begin to realize that we live our lives on the edge every day, our roads, our infrastructure, our food security, our transportation systems are all precarious because somebody somewhere is trying to make money. Wait for this bridge to be completed. We'll have an Aror Kimwarer situation where you will discover. Okay. And by the way, sorry, before I forget, this same Duale who is so busy with dual citizenship, he has not yet acted on this land act, which would allow registrars to be put in place for compensation, for way leave compensation. We are now talking about how this bridge will go, I don't know, from town all the way to the other side, how many families will be displaced. If we're talking about 82 billion, I think half of that, if not more, is going towards compensation of these families. When will these families be compensated? How will they be compensated? That is another scandal waiting to happen. So every step of the way, nobody's thinking about you crossing the ferry. Oh, and by the way, there's the Okoa Mombasa campaign that is currently ongoing. I'm sure the powers that be are very happy that this tragedy occurred because it has distracted us. You know, as Kenyans, we're very easily distracted. And I'm not downplaying the tragedy of losing 2 lives. That you can, 1 life, 2 lives, 10 lives, that is one too many. But it distracts from the politics, the SGR, the Okoa Mombasa business, the port, and we stir ourselves around and around as Kenyans. And at the end of the day, we will have fires in slums. We will have ferries capsizing. We will have people dying in the north. We will have continued crashes on the road. And we'll keep saying acts of God, and we'll spend a lot of time trying to figure out, oh, and also, as you were talking about Likoni ferry, there are cameras on either end. They are not working. Why aren't they working? You can't even audit what actually happened except those bystanders who are busy filming what actually happened. Right. So if you don't have divers, you don't have boats, you don't have cameras, we have a corrupt government. We have a failing state. We have people capitalizing forever.
Do you think more heads should have rolled?
Absolutely. Why is James Macharia still in office? He should have left such a long time ago, and this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. But he's protected, because behind him are cartels upon cartels upon cartels that are capitalizing, whether it's a Mombasa-Nairobi highway, whether it is now the Likoni ferry, whether it is this, whether it is... He is utterly protected. The only honorable thing CS James Macharia should do today is to resign.
Ben, just a quick...
The buck stops with him.
A quick side note. If you go to your Google today and you look for the price of a ferry that can ferry about 600 people, it's 300 million Kenya shillings. So the question is, how many baby Amandas must we lose while we are building this magnificent golden bridge over the crossing, when we could immediately find a better ferry at 300 million, which is around 1/8 of the cost of one Kimwarer?
As an interim measure. As an interim measure. There is nothing sustainable about this ferry business back and forth. But as an interim measure. That is what you call disaster risk reduction. That's what you call mitigation. That is what you call preparedness. And then the response needs to be in place in case of anything.
I'm a communication strategist, not a transport expert.
Dismas, what do you think about the ferry issue?
Well, I choose to look at it from 3 perspectives.
Do you think the government takes it with the seriousness it deserves?
Of course it does, but in the negative direction. Let's begin from the passengers or the motorists. I understand when you get into that ferry, basic common sense and standard operating procedures. You switch off your car and you get out. I don't know whether the lady did this or whether she was still in the car and lowered her windows. I don't know what happened. So, in as much as the Kenya ferry service is a disaster in itself, even some of the passengers and motorists, we actually invite this trouble. If you know that you're not supposed to be driving while you are drunk and disorderly, and you proceed to do the same, you cannot start blaming the CS or the engineers for a poor road. So for this one, the first level, I think, as passengers or even motorists, we've got a duty of care. Follow instructions. And they're written all over. They're very basic. And then the second one, now our disaster response in itself is a disaster. I saw the managing director of Kenya Ferry Service being interviewed on TV. And after one simple question, the fella did a runner. He disappeared. And you would have expected this MD to come for an interview dressed up, but he came in a Miami Beach shirt, and he was very casual. After doing a bit of background research, I discovered this guy is a CPA and he's a CPS. He's an accountant and he's a certified public secretary. But this fella can hardly speak in English. He can hardly speak in Swahili. Never mind, he seemed like to come from coast. So now you begin to wonder, how did he get this job? Are his qualifications valid? Something, again, we've said here times above number, the basic operating procedures. You would expect in that ferry that they've done sensitivity analysis and scenario analysis. That if a car, for some reason, slides, and maybe you should offer them the rope you've been talking about. But again, there are so many things that you are not able to understand. And because you don't have footage, so we don't know for a fact that, in fact, there was a passenger in that vehicle, or even there's a vehicle which went to the sea. Right. Because, there's no footage, there's no camera. I mean, there's nothing. For some reason, everything is not working. Which takes me to the next argument. is there a chance, and you know we are in Kenya, is there a chance that this thing is procurement driven? That there are some public servants who are creating a disaster so that they can benefit from this bridge. I understand that there are Kimarer and others have been cancelled. So there is maybe a huge appetite to make money. And what happens if you create a mini disaster? Now, the fourth point is, in Kenya, there's no consequence for a lapse of decision making. We had what Bichache says that somebody put up a school using a chicken mesh. Even if you go to the guys who protect chicken, they'll actually complain that that environment is not good for chicken, but it's not for human beings. We don't know whether anybody is going to be prosecuted for this. When you go back to the ferry, is there somebody today being prosecuted for manslaughter? Because there was a lapse in judgment, there was a lapse in communication, and there was failure in everything. And it's really sad that we are here talking about this. And these public servants who are now occupying some of the best beach hotels in Mombasa, air-conditioned rooms. Right now they're having pepper steak and single malt whiskey, even early in the morning, on our bill. And then around midday, they're going to do a news conference, and they say that we've deployed all resources. We are optimistic. This rain is affecting, I can predict what exactly they're going to say. Yeah, but is there anybody who's going to be, as Kinoti, Kinoti is Kipchumba's friend, has Kinoti arrested anybody for manslaughter? Because here people really ran from responsibility. Right. So there are so many things, and I think it's a system failure. All right. Yeah, there are no two ways to look about it.
And they're called disaster industrialists. You have humanitarian industrialists, you have disaster industrialists. As soon as you hope that this crisis triggers the need to do the following. That's why I say there are people who are very happy that two people drowned with beautiful optics, a mother and a daughter tugging at the heartstrings, etc., etc. Good. Here is 82 billion that we can use.
But even as now as passengers and motorists, because now we are being told that this lady was in the car, probably she didn't even engage the brakes, maybe she had parked in reverse. There are so many things that we don't understand, but we have a duty of care.
I think also, Ben, there is what we need to do as Kenyans going forward. When you pass through this Mombasa Road, there is a lot of lapses from just normal Kenyans on their own that do not need government interventions, that we do continuously until it is in our DNA that when I see an overpass there or a bridge, I don't use it. I just want to time when the vehicles are not there, I rush through. When an accident occurs, again we will sit here and say Masharia should go home. But the thing is this, Ben, the point I'm driving at is this. When we have done all this, Kenyans have a lazy way of doing things again. When we were addressing the issue of the daughter and the mother in the water, somebody brought a Swedish scuba diver or somebody. And we started now comparing the man with the Navy, and all of a sudden we forgot that there are people who are under the water.
Okay. And good points. We'll just hold the thoughts. Hold the thoughts.
Kenyans need to be reminded, the government cannot legislate nor control stupid. If you're stupid, you'll die.
Okay.
That's a bit of an insensitive statement.
Yes, it is.
I do not think.
If you're stupid and you drive drunk, you will die.
Okay, yes, okay. Insensitive
is not related to.
No, Kenyans in general keep doing dangerous things, hoping. How many condemned buildings today in Kenya have Kenyans living in them? Did the government force you to move in there?
Good point. Good point. Maybe to say it's not related to what happened in Likoni. It's a conversation we're following. You are following on the retrieval process and exercise at the Likoni crossing. You have been on it since the day of the accident. The questions being raised are many on the government's capacity to respond and manage disaster, the way the Kenya Ferry Service runs the ferries at the Likoni Channel being called to question, the fact that it seems reactionary after only an accident has happened. Meanwhile, we understand Kenya has sought the help of South Africa to try and locate the two bodies on the bed of the Indian